Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, luminous river, its currents shimmering with infinite possibilities. Each ripple carries a choice, a thought, a moment of focus, some fleeting, others lingering like echoes in the canyon of time. This river is not water but attention itself, the raw material of existence, and where you choose to cast your gaze determines not only what you see but what you become. The act of focusing is no passive glance. It is the sculptor's hand shaping the clay of identity, the painter's brush staining the canvas of destiny. We are, in essence, the sum of our sustained attentions. The mind, like a garden, flourishes where the light is directed. What you nurture grows, what you neglect withers. Yet this is no mere metaphor of productivity. It is a cosmic law, as fundamental as gravity. The universe conspires to mirror back the energy of your focus, bending reality to match the frequency of your deepest engagements. A musician, lost in the labyrinth of sound, becomes an instrument of harmony. A scientist, fixated on the dance of particles, dissolves into the mystery they seek to unravel. Where you place your focus is where you plant the seeds of your future self. But there is a shadow to this brilliance. The modern world is a storm of distractions, a carnival of flashing lights vying for your gaze, each promising meaning but delivering fragmentation. To focus haphazardly is to wander through life as a ghost, pulled by currents you did not choose, shaped by forces you do not recognize. Yet to focus with intention is to step into the role of architect, crafting not just a day or a year but the very essence of your being. This is the hidden alchemy of attention, the silent, daily choices that accumulate into a life. It is both mundane and mystical, as practical as a morning routine and as profound as the stars whispering their ancient secrets. To explore this truth is to unlock the door to self-creation, where focus is not just a tool but the very loom on which identity is woven. The idea that focus shapes identity is not merely psychological. It is ontological, a fundamental law of existence as old as consciousness itself. To focus is to invoke a kind of magnetism, drawing toward you the very essence of what you contemplate. Think of it as standing before a great, echoing chamber. Whisper a thought, and it returns to you amplified. Shout a conviction, and it reverberates through the corridors of your life until it becomes indistinguishable from your being. This is why the mystic and the scientist, though seemingly worlds apart, arrive at the same truth: attention is creative force. At the heart of this principle lies the interplay between perception and reality. What we call reality is not a fixed monolith but a fluid dance between observer and observed, a negotiation between what is seen and what is sought. The mind, in its ceaseless filtering, elevates certain signals above the noise, and in doing so, it forges pathways, neural, emotional, existential, that harden with repetition. A mathematician, immersed in equations, begins to see patterns in the rustling leaves. A poet, lost in metaphor, hears the world speak in verse. Focus, then, is not just observation but participation, a way of etching your presence into the fabric of what unfolds. Yet this creative power carries a paradox. Focus excludes as much as it includes. To choose one path is to forsake another. To embrace one identity means releasing others. The artist who dedicates themselves to their craft may find the noise of politics fades into irrelevance. The healer who fixates on mending wounds may forget the language of self-preservation. This is the double-edged nature of concentration. It grants mastery but demands surrender, offering clarity at the cost of narrowed vision. The question, then, is not just what to focus on, but how to focus with wisdom, to balance depth with breadth, intensity with fluidity. Underlying all of this is the silent, relentless force of habit, the grooves worn into the mind by repetition. Habits are focus crystallized, the rituals that shape identity when consciousness wanes. A single moment of attention is a spark, but sustained focus is the fire that forges character. This is why the ancients spoke of discipline as a sacred duty, because what you practice daily, you become eternally. The warrior trains until the sword becomes an extension of the arm. The monk meditates until stillness becomes the core of the self. There is no separation between the act and the actor, only the slow, inevitable merging of the two. And so we arrive at the central mystery. Focus is not merely a lens through which we view the world, but a chisel with which we sculpt ourselves. To direct attention is to whisper to the universe, "This is who I am. This is what I serve." The reply is inevitable, a life shaped by the weight of your gaze. There is an old tale, whispered in many traditions, of a sculptor who became the statue. Day after day, he chiseled at the marble with such devotion that his hands grew stiff, his posture rigid, his very breath synchronized with the rhythm of his craft. One morning, his apprentices found not a man shaping stone, but a figure of pale marble standing where the sculptor had last worked, his tools still clutched in now lifeless fingers. Some say it was a curse, others, a transcendence. But the wise understood. He had poured so much of himself into the act of creation that the boundary between creator and creation dissolved. This is the secret hidden in plain sight. We become what we contemplate. The story mirrors another, older still, that of the alchemist who sought gold but found himself transformed instead. For years, he labored over his furnace, staring into the molten swirls of metal and mineral, convinced the secret lay in some elusive combination of elements. Yet the more he studied the mysteries of matter, the more he noticed a curious shift. His own thoughts began to take on the qualities of what he observed. In the mercury's fluidity, he found his mind growing restless. In the stability of lead, a strange heaviness of spirit. Only when he abandoned his search did he realize the truth. The alchemy was never about transmuting metal, but about the slow, inevitable transmutation of the alchemist himself. The laboratory was merely a mirror. These stories are not fables of the past but living metaphors for the present. Consider the modern seeker, scrolling endlessly through digital streams, each flicker of light a tiny hammer shaping their neural pathways. They believe they are only observing, only passing time. But the mind does not distinguish between idle watching and devoted study. It absorbs, it adapts, it becomes. Like the sculptor, we risk freezing into the forms we fixate upon. Like the alchemist, we often mistake the medium for the message. The screens, the hobbies, the obsessions, they are not just distractions or passions, but looms weaving the threads of our future selves. Yet there is a counter-myth, one of redemption. In Eastern traditions, the archer who masters their art does not do so by focusing on the target, but by merging with the shot until there is no archer, no bow, only the flight of the arrow. This is the paradox of higher focus. It is not about strain, but surrender. To focus deeply is not to narrow the self, but to dissolve into the act until the act becomes the self. The musician becomes the music, the writer becomes the word, the lover becomes the love. Identity, then, is not a static thing, but a river fed by the tributaries of our attention. These narratives all point to the same truth. Focus is not a tool we wield, but a current that carries us. The question is not whether we will be shaped, but by what? Will we be the marble or the chisel, the alchemist or the gold? The choice is hidden in the quiet moments, in the things we give our days and nights to, in the silent repetitions that build, over time, into a life. The grandest truths are meaningless if they cannot be lived, and so we arrive at the crucial question. How does one harness the transformative power of focus in the chaos of ordinary existence? The modern world is a labyrinth of distractions, each corridor lined with screens, notifications, and endless demands for fractured attention. To navigate it with intention requires not esoteric knowledge, but a series of subtle shifts, a realignment of daily habits that quietly steer the currents of becoming. Begin with the mundane. The rituals of morning and evening, often dismissed as trivial, are in fact the scaffolding of identity. What you do in the first and last moments of your day sets the tone for all that unfolds between them. A writer who begins each day with pages of unfiltered thought soon finds their mind tuned to the frequency of creation. A runner who laces their shoes before dawn discovers, over time, that discipline has seeped into their character like dye into cloth. These small acts are incantations, spells cast upon the self through repetition. The key lies not in grand gestures, but in the consistency of focus, showing up, day after day, until the practice becomes inseparable from the practitioner. Yet focus is not merely about what we do, but what we allow. The mind is porous, absorbing the influences around it with or without consent. The people we engage with, the media we consume, the environments we inhabit, all of them whisper silently into the shaping of the self. To curate these inputs is to wield a quiet but immense power. Surround yourself with cynics, and cynicism becomes the watermark of your thoughts. Immerse yourself in curiosity, and the world begins to reveal its hidden layers. This is not naivety, but pragmatism, an acknowledgement that we are, in part, the average of what we let in. The digital realm, with its endless scroll and algorithmic seductions, presents perhaps the greatest test of our age. Every ping, every notification is a tiny referendum on what matters, a bid for your attention that, if left unchecked, will fracture focus into 1,000 shallow streams. The remedy is not rejection of technology, but ruthless discernment. Turn off non-essential alerts, designate hours for deep work, create digital sanctuaries where focus can flourish. These are not restrictions, but liberations, the carving out of space for the self to cohere. And then there is the deeper work, learning to focus through resistance. The things we most need to become often lie on the other side of discomfort. The book we avoid writing, the conversation we delay having, the skill we tell ourselves we lack the talent to master. Here, focus becomes an act of courage, a refusal to let the mind's flinch dictate the life's direction. Every moment spent leaning into the uncomfortable edge is a brick laid in the foundation of a more capable self. Procrastination, distraction, self-doubt. They are not personal failings, but sirens calling the mind back to shallow waters. To focus deeply is to sail past them, toward the horizon of who you might yet be. We stand, each of us, at the crossroads of 1,000 possible selves. The paths are paved not with grand declarations, but with the quiet, daily choices of attention, what we linger on, what we return to, what we give our hours and days to. This is the alchemy that needs no furnace, no elixir, only the willingness to look long enough at one thing that it begins to look back, to shape us in its image. The call is not to perfection, but to awareness. To pause, even briefly, and ask, what is my focus cultivating within me? Every email answered, every conversation held, every moment of stillness or striving. Each is a stitch in the tapestry of becoming. The sculptor, the alchemist, the archer, they are not figures of legend, but mirrors. We are always in the act of creating ourselves, whether we know it or not. The question that remains is the only one that matters. Who will you focus into being?